Welcome, friends, to Reality Test. What is reality testing, you may ask? Well, it's something we all do every day, maybe with our loved ones over dinner, with coworkers at the water cooler, etc., when we check our subjective or personal emotions, thoughts, and so forth against objective or sort of more agreed upon fact-based reality. Although, because Dr. Ray and I, Dr. Kay, are social constructionists, we don't actually believe there's one true objective reality, but rather our own personal versions of it constructed in the context of relationships. But you get the idea. So here in Reality Test, we're going to be testing the castmate realities and the producer antics of our favorite reality TV shows against what we know as licensed psychologists about the reality out here, off of our TVs. We hope you'll join us as we attempt to reality test. Listen, y'all, we have a lengthy version of our disclaimer in the show description text, also in our old episodes, but we do ethically need to at least include part of it at the start of each episode. So here's our briefest version of the disclaimer. If you've heard it before, you can skip ahead 30 seconds, or for the old episodes, 2 minutes. So although we're licensed psychologists, psychotherapists, supervisors in the context of our professional roles, we are not acting as therapists in the context of this pod, neither for you nor for the reality castmates we discuss. We will give our opinions as our whole human selves, albeit supported by our psychological knowledge, and we will talk about diagnoses rather than assigning them, as we cannot ethically assign diagnoses without formal psych assessment. But both the opinions and diagnoses we discuss might easily be erroneous, as we don't personally know the folks in reality TV shows. That's it. Thanks, y'all. Now check out our campy theme song.
Are you feeling stressed? Your head's all messed? Well, let's forget all the rest. Fuck it, we're blessed. Cause it's time to talk reality test. Come with us. Let's reality test.
Welcome to Reality Test. I'm Dr. Ray.
And I'm Dr. Kay. Feel free to check in and take a seat wherever you like. We're talking traitors.
We are talking traitors, motherfuckers. I cannot wait. I am so excited. This season is incredible.
It's already so good. And everyone's been talking about it just since they announced the cast, because it's such a good cast.
Incredible cast. So many people I love are on that show, and it just keeps getting better and better. And the first 3 episodes, mind blown.
So good. So good. And like, there's more people than we even knew were going to be in it. So this is a bit of a spoiler alert, actually, opportunity, which is that we're talking about all 3 episodes. So if you've only seen one, if it turns out we don't have enough time to get through all 3, we'll carry it over to next week. But we at least will be referencing things that have happened in all 3. So you will want to have seen them.
You will indeed.
But first, check in. So tell me what is on your heart and mind today, dear Dr. Ray.
What is on my heart and mind today is a great question. I didn't think of one beforehand, but I know. So my partner's parents, we've been doing a lot of work on the house. It's something I really enjoy doing now. I've joked that I'm going to quit psychology and become like a house flipper. I'm not actually going to do that, but it's just really nice for the brain to do something where there's a start and a finish. But we put in a fan for our downstairs bathroom, which for anyone who's ever used a bathroom, which I think is most people, is a big deal because things get a little tough when you don't have a fan in your bathroom.
The steam. So, it's also bad for like your lotions and stuff, like having just the shower steam and stuff. It's really bad. That is so exciting that you're doing home rec. Would you like to come home reno? Would you like to come reno mine?
Yes.
So welcome.
It's like my favorite thing to do these days. It's just such a fun. It's just the work we do is often so gray, which is wonderful. Sitting in ambiguity is an important thing, but it's also nice for a brain like mine to do things where there's a start and a finish, and then you get to look at the finished product. And
it's good, like, use of our hands. Like, I think there's something about physical tasks when we do so much with our brain for work.
Yes.
Literally just sitting down for most of our jobs. That's great.
We do. Yes. So that's been my update. But what is on your mind, heart, all the things today? Soul.
Body.
Body, soul, all
turducken.
all the parts.
Turducken. That is a reference because I'll even tell you why right now, because that's really what's on my heart and mind. Even though I swear I am also a separate person from this podcast, but we are working on our Patreon, which is launching tomorrow. Oh, wait, today, if you're listening to this, we happen to be recording on a Sunday this week, which we don't always, but in this case, it's tomorrow that you'll be hearing this episode. And also, therefore, for you, it's today that the Patreon has landed. It has landed.
Woo!
And we are so excited. It has been a lot of work and a long time coming in some ways, just in terms of our, it's starting back with the brainstorming level. It's been a long time. And it is so fun to see it really like materialize. We have an introduction video that you can just go watch, anybody, totally public. And you can see in there that I reference a turducken. That's why we are laughing about it. So you have to go find out why that's funny. Hopefully you think it's funny too. And the intro video is right there on the About page, or you can see it on the list of posts. There are really I think valuable and rich and juicy benefits available for each level of membership, $5, $10, and $20 a month. And you can also one-time purchase things and purchase collections of things. And then also, even a free viewer, there are things you'll find on there. So on Thursday, we're going to also drop our calendar for the next month and a half. So you can go check that out. And you'll see there's a level of purple, of a purple color for color coding of public options too. So I hope you'll check it out and think about joining us. We're giving out free memberships for every single Friday for the next 6 weeks. We are giving out a free membership to go up to the level 3 tier. And then we're also going to shout out anybody who joins our Patreon by name at the end of our next episode. It might be it might not be a length. We're trying not to keep it. We're going to try not to let it be lengthy. I'm not saying there are going to be a lot of people. There probably won't be. So it probably won't be lengthy anyway. But if it was, we would, try to contain it a little bit. So it might be that even if you joined a certain week, it might be the next week that you hear, or the week after. We'll just see. I don't know. I'm hopeful, but who knows? You gotta just swing for the moon. And if you don't land there, you land in the stars. So we're trying to manifest.
Exactly. We are indeed. And we're very excited and are extending our gratitude for all who decide to join our Patreon. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Advance gratitude. There's so much content. Every week there's gonna be new content and such. And I really highly recommend. There's also going to be trailers that I drop on the social media page and in collaboration with Dr. Ray Pods in terms of Instagram. So you will see you can see sort of about the things that you'd be able to get if you were in the Patreon membership. So yay, that's exciting. I think there was one other thing. Honestly, I wrote myself a little note so I didn't forget. And I think there's one other thing I wanted to mention. Oh, there are already going to be some things up that are the bigger items, not just trailers. So there's going to be something that I'm calling mental health info vids, which are videos that I've created around specific concepts from different types of reality television. So there's little samples of scenes from the reality television that then I pair with relational messages or recommendations or mental health kind of content. There's going to be one already up on the Patreon if you're a tier 3 member, and then we'll have more dropping soon, and we'll also be doing our mental health checkups on there for tier 3 people. And then so you'll also notice that there's a full archive. So this is the other thing I was going to mention. This is it. There we go. Okay, I got there. I had to just keep talking. So the other thing that I wanted to mention is you may have noticed that super annoying day not long ago when all of these episodes from the old episodes got reposted but locked on our Buzzsprout, which is our main platform for our podcast, because we were going to do the subscription model temporarily. I've just taken those off completely. So the old episodes, there are 30 of them that have been removed from the podcast world, Apple and so forth. They're now on Patreon. So you can now get the entire podcast on Patreon, including the archive. You do have to pay $5 a month to get access to the archive ones, just the last 30. But the rest after that are free. So you can go on there and still listen to the regular podcast. Anybody can. But if you want to listen to the old ones, that's how you have to go about finding them. You can also buy them at the collection for $20. So that's how you're going to find them. I think slowly I'll sort of move things into the archive as we go, probably by tens or something, so that we keep adding to it. But yeah, it is a massive undertaking. We have so many episodes, 79 or something, 73. So at some point we just have to kind of try to keep it wieldy. It's unwieldy. We need to be wieldy about it.
Yes, we're working on our wieldiness.
Our wieldiness is just a really key thing. We just got to do it. Got to up our wieldy game. Speaking of game, we also have a brand new type of segments. Brand new list, I should say, because I'm talking on the singular list of segments that are just for gaming shows. So you will hear as we go through these new sort of categories that we used. We do have 2 that are carryovers, the first and the last, actually, ironically. But in the middle, there's all these new ones. So we're excited. The old segments don't necessarily apply. So we're trying out something new. We're excited.
We are so excited. Traitors. It's everything right now.
I'm so excited. Okay. All right. Let's just fucking jump into it. Are we ready?
Yeah.
Shall we go?
Let's do it. Who's going to start? Me? You?
You go. I like it.
All right.
Yeah.
So, Traitors Season 3, let's go. So, we start with the castmates coming in via Jeeps. I wonder if Jeep was sponsoring the season of the Traitors. Who knows?
I hope they are Jeeps too. I don't even know. Which may show that they aren't being sponsored, because I feel like they would have like put a big, like Jeep.
This is true. Yeah, maybe it's some other form of vehicle. But
that was my assumption.
Yes. But so we start. Tony says he was boring. I was in the jungle eating bugs, and that's it. LOL. Not true. He is. We were talking about this a little off mic. I am such a Tony stan. I find his gameplay so chaotic. I also think he's adaptable and has grown over time. But there's something about him that I think he just has one of those brains that's always going at 1,000,000 miles a minute. And I love watching him play. And you can see in this game, he was really trying to keep a low profile. And unfortunately, it didn't work. He tends to be one of those players who either makes it to the end or gets kicked out early. And I think this time it was kicked out early at the hands of one of Dr. Kay's favorite, who did kind of a gangster mobster like move.
And felt bad about it, which was sweet.
Yeah.
But no, I'm a Boston Rob stan. So this is perfect. We're like on different sort of camps here. And it's kind of fun. We can be like.
And you don't like Tony as much. And I don't like Boston Rob as much, which is so funny. It's so interesting. I think he's magnetic. It's just all interesting. It's so interesting.
There are things I like about Tony too. I liked that he used to like hide in the bushes. Like that was such a smart gameplay. And the fact no one else really does it is wild. Until Rachel this last season. Oh yeah, Rachel. Oh my gosh, that's the other thing about our Patreon. We're now going to be like open about who we are, obviously, because you're going to see videos of us. So, but Dr. Ray / Rachel. That's her. There was the name of one of the players in Survivor just now that was like amazing player. She won actually, and she was incredible. And she hid in the bushes at one point and listened in on people. So that was a little bit of a Tony move. Actually, I didn't think about that.
Tony in his spy shack.
Yeah,
cracks me the fuck up. Oh.
So
it was the funniest thing. And he didn't sleep for like the whole time. He just was up. He just, I don't know. I'm a Tony fan. But he said he was boring, which is so far from the truth. And then Brittany says to Danielle, or Brittany about Danielle. And I'm not a Big Brother person, so I know that's a show I don't know as much about. But
should I explain this really quick? Because I have some feelings about it too.
Yeah,
I'll go hard
please
on it a little bit. So Brittany is a player of Big Brother. Danielle was with her on the last All-Star season during COVID. And Danielle and Brittany started out working together. And Danielle is, by the way, like a really famous player from like one of the first seasons. She should have won. And she's a Black woman. So like, honestly, I think that's part of why they also changed the way they gameplay. So like at the time when Danielle lost, it was because everyone she sent home went home and watched the season. So they saw that she had betrayed them. And after that season, they stopped letting people go home. So they would get sequestered. So they couldn't see that content, which is so important. So actually, if they hadn't been able to see her, I don't think she would have lost. So like that was a really big deal. So everyone thinks of her as like the best player that never won. And Brittany's also never won. But in the All-Star season, Brittany ended up betraying Danielle. So when she sees Danielle, her stomach drops. When Danielle sees Brittany, she starts crying. And so they start talking to each other. And then we see Brittany saying like, I know I fucked up. I know I hurt you. And then she goes, you were so hurt. And I didn't expect that. And then that hurt me. You know what I mean? I was like, what? Wait a minute. What? I'm going to hit pause on this. Like, it hurt you that she was hurt? Like, you know what I mean? It's almost like she didn't actually regret it at all. She just, like, felt bad that Danielle was hurt. So, like, saying, like, you fucked up. I don't even really, you know what I mean? I think it's like, I realized after I really hurt you, I wish I'd thought that through ahead of time. Just, like, a totally different way of putting it. I personally would not have taken that well as Danielle. But so now they're just very cautious of each other in the season.
Yes. I think, and pretty strategic about it in a way that's maybe actually protecting Brittany.
Yeah.
Ironically.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't want to, put the target on her back. It's
well
interesting.
Yes.
Yeah. It's fascinating stuff. New feature this year, people can shake Alan's hand. And they let Boston Rob into the game to potentially get rid of another player. Carolyn almost did it. She almost swapped Boston Rob for Tony.
Which is funny. Those are our two guys. Yeah.
Yes, they are our guys. Oh, I'm such a Tony lover. But
I was sitting there like, go, Carolyn. And you must have been like, don't do it.
I know. Exactly. I was like, no, don't take Tony out. But I think it shows the way, and we're going to talk more about her, I think, today, but it shows how she's always thinking strategically. And I think people constantly underestimate her.
Did you see her season?
I didn't. So we started that season of Survivor and then literally went on holiday break. And so I saw the first episode of her and she was like maybe going to get voted off, but then didn't. That was the episode I saw. And I wonder how far she goes. I'm so curious.
Are you going to watch the season or can I spoil it?
I think we might.
Okay,
I think we might. I've got a feeling she went far, but
yeah, totally. Because she's here for one. That's
right.
One thing you can kind of guess. But yeah, the main thing is that she is same thing as she's saying here, which she even tells us in the show that she's always underestimated and she's super smart. The thing that I can tell you that's not a spoiler is that she is a substance use counselor and she works with people with substances as somebody who also is recovering or in recovery. And so she is very mental health focused. She's also neurodivergent, which she talks about being autistic or on the spectrum. So I think that's the part where like everyone calls her like all over the place or whatever and saying she's crazy, which is just so like ableist, as we were talking about off the mic. That's something that Dr. Ray also said, like really there's ableist treatment of her. And I don't know. It's so frustrating. I really hated seeing it. At one point I thought Gabby was the one saying that she was batshit. And I was so glad it wasn't Gabby because I was like, no, Gabby, do better. But yeah, it's just such a bummer because I love Carolyn. I'm rooting for her big time rooting for her. She's doing so well.
She is.
Where Carolyn stands together.
She literally heard them talking about her. Like she knows everything that's happening. Mm-hmm. And you know what? They're going to regret the day they underestimated her. I hope.
Yep, exactly. Actually, you know what? Why don't I do my segment on her right to this very instant? Sure. Because I have her as the segment, new segment alert, beep, beep, beep. I don't know why it would be that. We're backing up into a new segment.
Yes,
it's called Your Psyche is Showing. So this is something that reveals something about a player's psyche or just way of being in the world. So it doesn't necessarily have to be their psychological or mental health functioning. So for me, I have Carolyn and neurodivergence. And I think that's really what she's referencing when she says that she's used to not being taken seriously is sort of the way that her autism shows up. I also felt like when she did hear people talking about her, there was sort of like a nod to perseveration. I felt like the way that she was sort of saying like, I don't think I can let this go, which like on the one hand, a lot of us feel that way. Like, we hear someone talking about us that hurts and sticks with us. But in that setting, I think a lot of people would be able to be like, yeah, you're right. Like, I just shouldn't think about it. But she really couldn't, and she even like referenced like, I really cannot let this go. Sort of, it felt like more of a characterological thing she was saying that just like she knows this about herself. Like she won't be able to. So that's common also with OCD and ADD and ADHD and other things as well. So it's not necessarily the autism, but it could be. But either way, I felt like that was a little bit of us understanding her psychology as well. And I felt like she was just doing such a beautiful job in the turret, for example, when she was talking to other traders, because she does become a trader. Just it's not a huge spoiler because people have seen it, but she does a really great job of holding her shit together and not letting it get to, I think she actually comes across as quite social in what we've been seeing. And I think that actually is unique from the Survivor season. So I get the sense she's grown as well since the Survivor season and continued working on herself. So I love her. I love her so much.
I love her too. I have a segment about her as well.
You just unmuted. You scared the shit out of me too. I was like, what just happened?
So sorry. So that was my bad. I unmuted, but I have a segment about her as well. I'm trying to remember our new segments, which one it was, but it's about I think the psychological construct that's benefiting her gameplay.
I love it.
Is her self-awareness. Like she knows, she is so aware of the perception of her and interestingly also aware of how she can use it to her benefit. Like people find my behavior hard to pin down. And actually, I think that's a strength. Mm-hmm. And I still need to think about how I'm coming across so that I don't take it too far. I think because she's had to be so reflective of how she comes off in social situations, it's a huge benefit to her here. And that she doesn't have obvious tells because of the way she's perceived, which is ableist. So she's kind of using other people's ableism to her benefit, which I think Go Carolyn. I am so here for it.
Yeah, totally. She's like, the fact that they don't know what my normal is means that they don't know if I'm being normal, which is so true.
Yep. Obsessed. So Boston Rob, she decides not to go for it. And I have another segment here about just the cast of the Traitors in general, which is so queer. We've got so many queer folks in this season, which is incredible. Chriselle is Gabby, who are very femme bi women, which I love to see. We've got Bob the drag queen. We've got that diplomat who is bi.
Yep.
We've got Bob Harper.
Bob H. Yep.
Yeah. And I was thinking about why queer people likely do well on this show. And Alan, of course, is queer. And I was thinking about how from a young age, oftentimes minority stress theory tells us that queer people sometimes feel that they have to hide parts of themselves and that sort of stress takes a toll on them psychologically. But if we're to view this from like a post-traumatic growth lens and how this is helpful here, they maybe might have an easier time in certain settings reading the room and knowing what parts of themselves they have to keep to themselves than people who don't have that experience. And I was talking to my partner about this, and he was talking about, he's really into British spies and like MI5 stuff, about how there after World War II, there were so many gay spies. And there's something there with like having to know how to code differently because of your experiences. And so I think that's why queer people continue to be on this show in large numbers. Interestingly, a lot of bi plus people too, which there's something there about like bi plus people. Yeah, you have to code switch between like hetero cultures and more like LGBTQ plus parts of yourself. So I don't know. There's a lot of interesting stuff here that I'm just loving. So
that is incredible. I've never thought about that. That makes total sense. Like sort of used to living on the fringes where it's sort of like neither gay nor straight for bicultural folks or bisexual folks, and sort of like therefore it's easier to cope with actually not being on the radar. And in fact, it is better to not be on the radar in those cases because no one is really going to be accepting is the thought. And so therefore in this show, it's also really good to stay under the radar and not feel like you need to be seen in order to feel real, or like to feel like you belong in order to feel real. Yeah, that's so true.
Yes.
I love that.
Oh, yes. But it was I'm so into it and just love this show. So then they get into the house, they talk to each other. There's interviews with Alan in this amazing scene. I thought some of the Tom Sandoval stuff seems a little clickbaity, but I thought it really worked here. Yeah. Where Alan was like, how would you feel if I tapped you on the shoulder? Would you feel I betrayed you, Tom? Doesn't feel so nice, does it?
I'm sorry, I didn't tap, maybe. Wait, was it?
Oh, no, did or didn't? I can't remember.
He's like, betrayed. No, because he wanted to be faithful. Yeah.
Yes. So that was incredible.
Yeah, that was so funny.
Loved it.
Would you feel I betrayed you, Tom? Yes. Doesn't feel nice, does it?
Yes.
I was like, okay, I will take it. It was a little clickbaity, and I still loved it. I was like, I will take that, Alan. Thank you. Yes.
So here for it. And it's also good because I think Alan almost in the past has had a distance from reality TV. Like Andy from Bravo does all the fun, Yeah. So it's him kind of acknowledging. It's a little bit like, yeah, I'm kind of into this too. Where before it's like, I'm a actor kind of guy. Yes. So I liked that in that way as well.
Such a good point. He was like in on it with us. And to anybody who doesn't know, Tom Sandoval is the one who cheated on Ariana Madix very famously from Vanderpump Rules. It was like on CNN, so I'm imagining you've heard of it. But yes, you're right. He sort of was like a cultural nod where we usually think of him as just like being isolated in his castle waiting for the next play he's going to do on stage or something.
Yes. Yes. Loved it. Our roundtable choices are Danielle Reyes, Carolyn, So Here For, and Bob the drag queen. Such good choices.
Yeah.
Perfect choices.
I have to say, I was worried about Danielle Reyes because they did Dan last season from Big Brother, and they're just not good traders. But Big Brother players are not good traders. I don't know what's going on, but they're just not doing it. So I was immediately worried, but
yeah. They think they're good traders too, and then they're just not. There's something missing there. I don't know what it is.
Yeah. It's so weird.
Yes.
But I was so excited though.
Yeah, so we'll see. So we're so excited. And then there's a new twist. So when they get to the final, they won't tell us if they're traitors or faithfuls, which means, they can, when they're kicked out, so they can only rely on their instincts, which is stressful for sure.
Mm-hmm. I love it because I was thinking about the fact that also they might not know if there's 3 or 4 traitors total or whatever before they start losing people. So it definitely like gets them to a point where like I was thinking about why did they do this? Like what was the impetus for this rule? Mm-hmm. And I was thinking that it might be that like, for example, last year, the 2 faithfuls might have felt betrayed by the fact that they figured once they got Ari out, that would have had to be the last traitor. Like they might have been thinking numbers wise. That means that's it. So like that's not fair to them. They might have been like, that's not fair. Oh, that's 2 years ago, I guess. The first season. They might have felt like that's not fair because we figured numbers wise that meant that there was no one left. And so they might be like, okay, we need to stop that from even being the thing you can guess based on numbers. And
I like that.
Right?
Yeah.
Could be that. And I like not knowing anyway. I think that's kind of fun. Them not knowing because we'll know.
Yeah. It is interesting where I think the traitors are at a definite advantage for most of the game, but in that final round table, it almost shifts and they're not. So maybe that's a way to equalize that. I'm not sure.
That's great too. I love it.
Oh, but so fun. And then there's some post round table scheming. Tom and Tony are suspicious of Chrishell. Zac Efron's brother, who they're taking a nod from like The Bachelor and being like, what do they call him? A grounded guy or something in his
even
bio.
See his bottom third. Oh my God, funny.
Yeah,
I didn't even look at his bottom third. That's so funny.
It's hilarious. It's like grounded or something like that.
Oh my God, too much.
And then Zac Efron's brother, Dylan takes this to Chrishell to kind of make friends.
Yeah,
and then Chrishell suggests it's revenge because she's friends with Ariana.
Yeah. Which you could see, it's potentially true. And then also Tom is just like going off on like things, his theories. Like he's like, oh, Carolyn and Danielle. Like at first I thought Carolyn was, but she's just like that. Like now that I see she's fidgety, it's just that she's fidgety. And like Danielle's definitely not a traitor. So he thinks they're both definitely not traitors. And it was kind of funny because that first day, the traitors that got tapped during the roundtable haven't met each other yet. So they don't know that each other is a traitor. And so Danielle and Carolyn kind of just like buddy up, not knowing that both of them are traitors. And then later in the challenge, Danielle and Bob the drag queen do the same thing. It's quite funny. So the challenge is like a little bit of a social experiment because they're in a big boat. They're all rowing together with two coxswains at the front. And then they go up to these rafts. And at each raft, two people have to get off the boat onto the raft in order to keep the money that they get at that raft. But the problem is if they get off onto a raft, they also are eligible to be evicted or murdered that night. So it actually is like quite a death sentence to get off. But at first, the housewives are the ones who are doing that because they don't really realize what that means. And so they think that they're taking care of the bigger group by doing it. So I think the thing is, like what I wrote here was like, it feels like so many housewives are getting onto these rafts just because they don't know what that means. And so Dolores, for example, like hopped off very quickly without anything. The reason it looks bad is because if you're a traitor, then you don't care if you're up for murder or if you don't have a shield because you can't be murdered anyway because you are a murderer if you're a traitor. So then it would look like traitors would be quick to hop off the boat because they don't care. So then the interesting thing is that I noticed that the two traitors that do actually get onto a raft both got onto the raft at the same time. It was Danielle and Bob the drag queen and both on the third raft. So I was thinking about that, like why is that timing the same? It's sort of interesting. They both also used really good reasons for doing it. Like they both sort of like fake cried to get onto the raft. Which is also interesting, but no one suspected them at all too. And then so they ultimately sacrificed themselves. It's like they in a belabored way got off onto the raft. And the other thing I was thinking about the timing is like at this point people are going to notice the first two rafts, like who's hopping off. But at some point people will stop sort of worrying about who's the traitor because it's like, well, someone has to do it. And so I was thinking it was interesting that the third raft seemed to be that moment for both of them. So
I have this is my socio-political moment. I found this highly socio-political.
Oh, the gender stuff. I have that too.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, I think you did the same one.
Yeah, gender and ageism, I think. Like the intersection of gender and ageism here were pretty gross. The men's total refusal to get off the raft to me was disgusting. And who were the two men who ended up getting off the raft?
Both gay. The Goyles and the girls got off onto the rafts.
Yeah, it was unreal. And Bob, I loved when he was like, me giving that speech about sexism was true. And I was also trying to, play this moment up because it was just vile the way the men just refused to get off the raft. And
one
then
of them even said like, okay, so 10 women. Like they just like said out loud, okay, so I guess we're just dropping off 10 women. Just like assumed none of them would be men. It's so fucking rude.
It was unreal. And I'm glad that some people, like I think Chrishell called it out as sexist. Maybe Gabby too. I'm not sure.
Gabby definitely did.
The intersection of like ageism and gender politics there was really shitty to watch.
housewives are also older women and very like caretaking. And even after they found out what it meant, Robin still said, I would do it again because that's just who I am. I'm going to take care of the group. But the thing was,
Dorinda.
Yeah,
I think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then she got so mad. And the reason Dorinda got so mad is because not only were the people on the rafts not eligible to be safe, they were also abandoned there while the rest of the group went home. They were still stuck on the rafts. They were not able to eat at the same time, so they got the leftovers when they got back. And the other thing was that when they did that, they assumed that 10 people would be out on the rafts, but actually when the boat got to the last raft, no one was willing to get off. So they actually only ended up with 8 people that were eligible to be murdered, which is not fair. That's not what they all agreed to. So I totally understood why Dorinda was pissed. And I actually felt like she was kind of contained for how pissed she could have been, but yeah. Yeah,
she made it nice.
Yeah, exactly. She's just trying to keep it together a little bit. I just really the fact that I think I can't remember who it was who said that. I almost think it was the royal. I almost think it was the royal who said 10 women or whatever.
I think
about dropping off. That was so fucked up.
Not okay.
I was so pissed. Yeah,
not okay.
And you're right about the ageism as well. Yeah, just so wild. Nope, no good. That's my bigger sociopolitical. I have an honorable mention later too, but that's fabulous. Yeah. So we knocked that one right off. That's one of the carryover segments that we kept around.
Woo woo.
Okay. So Abby ends up saying the men were really in it for themselves. So true. Dorinda makes a great point that they sacrificed themselves thinking there'd be 10, but the chances are higher therefore to get murdered because that isn't what happened. She was kind of pissed off crying in the testimonial face to camera moment. They ended up getting abandoned. So then in the post-challenge scheming, this is the after stuff back at the house, people think that there are traitors among the rafts, but a lot of people don't think it's Bob the Traitor. Bob the Traitor. You see that? I wrote that too. Bob the Traitor.
He would love that. I think he would love that nickname.
He sure would. And he's doing, well enough to be able to own that name. So that's great. Definitely doing a traitorous role here. So they hadn't waited to eat either, which was really not fair. So people were pissed and they didn't really want to hear it. Sandoval goes and hugs Danielle. I actually kind of thought that was nice, but that is sort of his thing. He finds someone who's on the outs and goes and offers pity because he figures that makes him look good. So it wasn't genuine to me, but I also felt it was kind of nice the way he went over. Dorinda was actually acting fine. She was clearly pissed off and crying in the testimonial, but then she was acting like she was okay. And then she sort of started lashing out a little bit. And she said, I would have never done what I did for the team if I didn't know everyone was all in. That tells everyone who we are. She says that to Dolores, which I was yeah, but that's a bad thing. It tells everyone you might be a traitor. So people thought that she was fighting with everyone because she is a traitor and she felt safe. Because why would someone who's not a traitor fight if a traitor would get them out? By the way, one thing I was a while ago that I meant to mention, which was part of the playing more politically smart, is that, and I think this was sort of this is somebody who's playing sloppy, was that Tom Sandoval. So let me start there. One of our segments is called Who is Playing a Politically or Strategically Sloppy Game and Why?
Oh, yes.
I have a few people. There's 2 that are way more obvious that come up later, but one is that Tom Sandoval, right after the traitors were named in the round table, he was grilling people with his eyes. He was mean mugging people. And I was just thinking, not smart. If you know you're not a traitor, if you look at someone who is a traitor like that, they might think you're onto them. So they would get you out. And Bob the Traitor even said, I have to be worried about Tom because he was looking at me particularly. So I really feel that was a poor, sloppy move.
I agree. I totally agree. Oh. Yeah, Tom is not the savviest of humans. But, is it my turn again?
Sure is.
Excellent. So now it's murder o'clock. So the traitors go and meet each other. Danielle and Bob are so excited that they're both traitors. The end saying they gave the performance of a lifetime. I was eating out of the palm of your hand. It was really sweet. And then they say the wicked crew, they're not going to see anything like this. And I agree. I think they've got some good things going, though. We were talking off mic that they might be playing a little too hot.
Yeah, exactly. That's actually where my sloppy game is going to go to. I think we both agreed on that, too, that it's going to go to Danielle and Bob because they both end up playing very sloppily later.
They're getting a little excited, I think. And then... we're not sure who they care or kill. care about, kill.
They cut episode 1 before we see who they kill. Totally.
Yes. And then Alan says, by the breaking of my thumb, something wicked this way comes. And then it was Rob. And so he's going to be there and he's going to be a traitor and he is pumped. He said, you're a sicko. I love it. Payback is coming. I'm going to murder them all. I can't wait. So that's kind of the way that goes. And he's very excited. He's going to go in like a little cage thing, but we don't know what's going to happen next.
The one thing we do know is that he says he won't join alone, which is important. Like that's right. I left that episode like I have to watch the next episode right this instant because I knew he wouldn't be the only one joining, and I knew at that point we'd met everyone that was on the list of people who were playing, so I knew it would be people we didn't know yet were going to be playing. So I was so stoked. It was a huge cliffhanger, very well done, and he is smart because if just Rob came in alone, there would be so much heat on him, you know. Right. So it was smart to have him come in with other people. So.
So episode 2, back to you, right?
Yeah, we'll just do it that way for ease. So that then brings us, so like it's those scenes are like in the woods, in the leaves, right? Like he's in a black cloak and then it turns out it's Rob. So then now we cut back. First of all, we cut back to them in the woods to find out who the newbies are because they tell us right away, which is fantastic. So I wrote like OMFGGGG, stop it right now, all in caps, because the other 2 players that come in are Wes from the challenge and Derrick from Big Brother. And those are 2 of the biggest players in those games. Like I would say there's a couple that are bigger than Wes, maybe, arguably, in the challenge, but he's still one of the top. And Derrick is absolutely considered by many to be the top of Big Brother players. He played 1 season, he won it by a landslide. He's a detective, and he just like completely slaughtered his game of Big Brother. So, he brings up the fact that all 3 of them are gamers because then we have Survivor via Rob. And they agree that they're going to stick together because they're going to do better that way. And Wes brings up the fact that the other 2 are on the Mount Rushmore of their shows, and really Wes is too. So that's exciting. We then cut back to the traitors who have no idea this is happening. And Carolyn and Danielle start to quibble. They start to quibble a little bit. And Carolyn ends up saying to Danielle, well, yeah, but you haven't played this game because this ain't Big Brother, because Danielle kept saying like, I know how to do this. And Carolyn was like, you really don't know how people are going to respond. And that was a very like socially attuned, self-aware answer. That's really true. You don't know. You can't predict that. They can't agree on anything, but they end up agreeing it should be a housewife, but that they want to focus on Dolores, Dolo, Dorinda, and Robin, not Chanel. So that's the last we see of that. We don't know who is going to show up because the way that the Traitors works is that then we see them agree on one of 3 people, but not which one. And then we cut to the breakfast the next day where the people that come into breakfast are only going to be people who survived, obviously. I mean, So the person who gets murdered just doesn't show up the next morning. So we come into breakfast. Tony brings up that Dorinda could be a traitor because she had been fighting and like seemed totally safe. Others said that they've heard that name as well. I think it was Gabby who said, yeah, I heard that. We learned that Nikki, Gabby, and Chriselle are besties. Very cute little trio there. We learned later that they call themselves the Bambies because they all have wide, big eyes. Sandy, which means Tom Sandoval, says that a housewife traitor would indeed murder another housewife to take the heat off themselves. So then we see who they took out, and they took out Dorinda, which is just so dumb. And like Carolyn, it was such a mistake. And even Carolyn had said that to them, like not Dorinda. Like Dorinda's a shield. She like specifically used the language shield. Like she is a shield. We keep her. Everyone thinks she could be a traitor. Why wouldn't you keep her? It was so true. I was like, what are we doing? Like, so I think that was sloppy gameplay right there. It was clear that Bob and Danielle were on the same page about that too. So that really goes to both of them as a mark. So she says that she came in with a mark on her back. So Dorinda tells us to the screen she feels like she came in with a mark on her back. I don't think that's true. I think it really was more based on her in the kitchen. But when she doesn't come back, Dolo's bummed because they're like besties. Dolores, who's from New Jersey, Real Housewives of New Jersey. Dorinda's from Real Housewives of New York. Robin, who's from Real Housewives of Potomac, says that it's clear they're being targeted. Danielle makes an effort to make it clear that a housewife would kill a housewife to throw people off their scent. I really don't think you need to do that. Like, first of all, Tom already said it, but then second of all, like, it was just so obvious and loud. She says it to Sierra, though. Like, she says, like, well, like, a housewife could kill a housewife. And Sierra was like, so that it would show that they're mean business. So I don't think she actually fully understood what Danielle was trying to say. So that might be why Danielle got more explicit and louder about it. Because it's not to say that they mean business. It's to, like, say that it's not that it couldn't be a housewife it's actually to say they don't mean business, frankly. But that did Bob the drag queen and Danielle cry about Dorinda not coming in. And like, they don't even know Dorinda. So sloppy. No one else is crying. It just was silly. And the other thing that was wild is that it turned out all three traitors were sitting next to each other at the table. I don't know if you noticed. That was weird. I was like, how did that happen? And I don't know. The whole deal. Just sloppy play. This is like the first, we're getting these like little cues about sloppy play. It gets worse. So these are the first moments where we're like, ugh.
I have a little segment here too about breakfast and this show in general and what like a psychologist producer might highlight a little more.
Love.
I remember Phaedra last season in the reunion saying like, because at the end she was so good and she kind of petered off a little bit at the last like round table. Like the psychological toll of playing this game, I think it's hard to be deceptive day in and day out where everyone is looking at your micro cues. And I think like more on that would be really interesting because I think learning that about Phaedra, who I just consider to be just such a force and so incredible that even she felt tired by the end. I can't even imagine. And I feel like breakfast is when a lot of it comes out. Like breakfast, for whatever reason, people's shit gets activated.
Yeah, because they're like looking at each other's in their faces, like in their faces. They're like right there in front and center, and they all feel like the need to really work hard at like, what do I do if I'm not a traitor? Like, what do I look like? And I totally agree because there's all this research on, for example, queer people, which is why that's another reason that's a really good reference, is that all of the research on concealment of your sexual identity shows all of these issues like anxiety, depression, trauma, and obviously there are other issues there like marginalization associated with it, but really just concealment alone of your full self is like dissociating or dissociating out a part of yourself. So that is exhausting. We know that has serious toll on you. This is also where my honorable mention for the sociopolitical is, because this is where Wells said, I think he said, yes, queen. He said, yes, queen. And I felt like it was to Chanel Ayan. I felt like that's appropriation. You know what I mean? So I put that as another sociocultural issue, sociopolitical issue, when he said that to Chanel Ayan at the Survivor's Breakfast.
Excellent.
Oh. Is that the end of the page? Yeah, that is good.
Oh, whoops, my bad.
Nope, you're totally fine.
And so then we have the Trinity of Terror Challenge.
Oh, there's also the post-breakfast scheming.
Oh, my apologies.
Baby.
The post-breakfast scheming. So Danielle and Dylan are scheming, and Dylan trusts her because they're both Aquariuses. I'm an Aquarius, and us Aquariuses are obsessed with other Aquariuses and often think our sign is the best. I feel bad. My partner's a Scorpio, so he gets a lot of shit for his sign, but my sign tends to come off okay.
It does. And I'm an Aquarius rising, so I'm with you.
Yes. Aquariuses, we're just so different and so nice and blah, blah, blah. No, it's fun being an Aquarius, but
I like that part of mine.
Yes. But Wells says
about Dorinda.
About Dorinda. It was a dumb idea because I think a lot of people were saying her name. I agree. I totally agree with what you said. I think that getting rid of Dorinda was a bad idea. And I think Carolyn was just like, didn't want to fight about it anymore and was just like, I'm just going to let this go kind of thing.
Because it was 2-1. She really didn't have a choice. Like if they decided to go to a vote, she's out anyway. So she eventually gave in. But that's why they were arguing. And I just feel like that's so crummy. I get why she feels like she's alone, you know?
It's hard stuff. And Robin thinks it's a good idea because it creates confusion. And Wells is suspicious because why is Robin defending the the traitor's decision making? And I think Robin's just kind of speaking her truth, really. I think that's kind of her MO here. Yeah. Rob, Wells, and Eric are then introduced at this Trinity of Terror challenge. Derrick likes Danielle, says she's the best to never win, which is really nice. He doesn't say that about Brittany, who's also never won. So sorry about it, Brittany. Danielle immediately says he's a cop, which is interesting.
Yeah, like if you're going to work with him, like, you know what I mean? She even says that later that she wants to work with Derrick. So if you're going to work with Derrick, why would you out him as a cop like that? You know, he actually, by the way, has his own show. He's like, and it's separate from Big Brother. Like he has a show about like finding murderers, like tracking down murderers.
Wow. I have to say, I have this Big Brother bias where I've never watched the show. And now I don't think they're very good at this game. But they're not. He is flying under the radar and in a way that
players.
Yeah.
Yeah. Say what you're saying.
No, yeah, in a way that I think is interesting. I'll be interested to see if it goes a little too much like Dan last season, which was his kind of strategy. I don't know. There's something about Big Brother players that it's like the social aspect that I think the housewives have down pat and Survivor players are a little good at. They seem to be missing, which I don't I don't get it.
Yeah, it's like that thing I've said before about like the new iteration of gaming shows is that it's like relational and cutthroat. And Big Brother is like really just used to the cutthroat part. So they're not doing a good job of thinking about other people. So like I have 2 segments I could do here because one of our segments is what is a psychological concept that would make a given tactic or strategy easier or better or more effective. And one of them for me is perspective taking. Like, I really think like Danielle and Bob the drag queen, and basically if we're saying Danielle, probably most Big Brother players, I would say except Derrick, really don't do a good job of taking the perspective of another player and thinking about what they look like. Like, they just are so sloppy. And I think Dan, same thing, like him not understanding why people were weirded out that he wasn't throwing out names was wild. Like, why aren't you understanding why that's such a big deal? I just don't get it. So that, for me, the lack of perspective taking, and maybe like not doing enough research, I don't know, is really just not working for me. And I think if they really tried to put themselves in someone else's shoes, it would just really help a lot for their games, make them more effective, which then brings me to my second segment that is relevant to what we're saying, which is who is playing a politically and strategically smart game and why. And one of mine is Carolyn and the other one of mine is Derrick. So it is interesting because I agree. I've thought that Big Brother players do not jive well with this setting. They do well at the challenge, but they're, again, not the best at the challenge either. So there's something about the translation of Big Brother to other spaces that isn't working. I will tell you, Big Brother is addictive. Like, if you start watching it, there is real strategy that goes into that game that's very unique. And it is so fun. Like, I'm obsessed. I love that show. So if you get into it, it's like one of those things like Survivor where you start watching and then you start to get into the people who are like veterans and so forth. So Derrick, though, is one of the few players who's only played once. He's never come back. He's never, and he just like demolished it. People talk about him all the time. Part of why they talk about him is because he and Cody, who was the other Big Brother player that sucked last season, started out as a traitor, went downhill.
Oh my God.
Yeah, immediately. So he and Cody played together from the beginning as like a duo. So when he went to Dylan with the shield out of this challenge and gave him the shield, I was like, he's tapping Dylan to be his like Cody, to be his number one, which I thought was so smart. It's someone outside of his own show, but he's still thinking about his show as being part of his shield. And the reason I think he might be safe from what you were saying about how the flying under the radars like Dan, he was speaking up to the whole group. Like when you talked about Rob, I was like, good for him. Like he's not hiding. He's talking about like strategy in front of people. He is a faithful, so that helps, I think. But yeah, I think Derrick really has a big chance of winning this show. Like big. Yeah.
The only other person who I can think, I think Boston Rob will get found out, even though I think he's good. I just think he's not
going to win. Yeah. No. He never does. He's too big. Yeah.
Jeremy is playing a really good game and is on to some people, but is then like, I'm going to take a step back and not say who I think this time because it's too early on. I think... at the end, I think I remember Tony betrayed him one time. And I wonder because I think Jeremy's a little more relational than Tony is. And I wonder if that's going to serve him really well here because I think he's a really good player too. But yeah,
he's a little sloppy about telling people like the Bob the drag queen moment. He does, right. I think, talk a little too much, but because he's loyal. His weakness is his loyalty. That's honestly the only weakness he has is his loyalty, which is that's always been the case on Survivor too. It's only ever been his loyalty that bites him. So I think if he can have learned from that, then it might be totally his game. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. He did tell Bob the drag queen and that, yeah. Huh. Yeah, he might. I was impressed by him, but he might not make it. We'll see.
Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see.
It'd be so cool to see because I agree. He's actually been playing quite well. I just think, if it follows the same sort of track as like his previous game, then it could be something like actually quite sad to see if something happens. I will say, why don't we? I like went really into detail about like who was giving whom the coins. You could probably just recap what the challenge was like and don't even do my notes because they're like over detailed.
I'm trying to remember the coin. Shoot, I'm forgetting the challenge now. Can you go into it? I'm totally blocking this challenge for some reason.
It was basically like a popularity test because we have Rob up and they're all hung up in these cages, like Rob, Wes, and Derrick, and the other players have to go find coins in these bags and put the coins in their slot. And if they put enough coins, that person gets oh my God, I still couldn't say it, lowered down onto the ground. And then they have a shield. So all three of them have shields, but unless they get lowered down in the right amount of time, they can't give those shields to people. But basically, it's like giving them a gift they can give someone else. So it's perfect. It takes the heat off of them, makes them more desirable to help. And so everyone basically went for Rob first because Rob, they had all snubbed him at the beginning by saying we didn't want to bring him into the game. So everyone's trying to make up for him. And then they basically go for Derrick next, and then Wes is last. But they all got lowered down. So they all bring shields in.
Yes, fascinating. Yeah, that's right. I forgot that. Or maybe I got up for a snack in the middle of that one. That was probably my problem.
Yeah, it was definitely gratuitous. Like my amount of notes about it is definitely gratuitous. Like you really don't need it. It was just an interesting sort of political and social experiment, or like really popularity contest.
Yes, and which is interesting. We love to see it, but it's interesting how people kiss Boston Rob's ring because I think they're afraid of him. He wields power so well. I'll give him that. And I think some of it is like he has this paternalistic sort of leadership style that he just knows how to use in a way that's like, no, I mean, I bet if I met him, I bet I'd be charmed by him. I have no doubt. There's something about him that is very charming, but it also there's something about it that makes me angry in the paternalism. But I mean, Tony's just as bad in different ways. Yes. Like he has internalized sexism and can be very forceful. There's something about his chaos that is just more appealing to me. I don't know why, but he's certainly imperfect and a cop. So it's like, I don't know. Yeah.
No, I totally agree. And I've watched Boston Rob since the beginning. And so like, I've just had a big like soft spot for him from the beginning, but I will say he is incredibly smart. Like he is very smart at these games. And there is a reason people get him out early because it's smart too. But one of the things that you're picking up on is he has this style that is very paternalistic where he stays quiet. So he's withholding. And so then he's really quiet and everyone's wondering, what does Rob think? So then when Rob does speak up, everyone holds this huge weight with it. Like it matters a lot when he does speak. But he also speaks beautifully and like not in a mean way, which helps. You know what I mean? Like so people are like, right, that does make sense. And sort of like, wow, he's being kind, you know? So it's like, it's like that makes it really matter. And it is totally different than Tony, who's like sort of hectic when he talks and makes it more endearing in that way with Tony, where you're sort of like, oh, he's like lovable, like stepping on his words or, you know, whatever it might be, like said embedded instead of indebted at one point, or, you know, it's like he's lovable in that sort of way, which makes sense that we're drawn to that too. So with Rob, it's like when he first played, he was like a teenager, like douchebag kind of. I don't know. There's just something like it's cool to have seen him grow into who he is. So I just have a really big soft spot.
Yeah, which is and he felt bad about what he did, but he knew he had to do it. It was kind of a cool move.
It was awesome. It was awesome. And he felt like he had to protect Bob, which I actually really appreciated because he didn't have to do that. Like we saw last season where the traitors betrayed each other, you know, and really let each other get pulled out of the game. So he really didn't have to try to protect Bob, but he did. I thought that was awesome. He used his political prowess to protect a traitor.
Yeah. I found myself wondering, I'm like, would Tony still have gone if he hadn't done that? That was my one like double, and he might have because it felt like the wind was on Tony's sail, and that's the one moment where I was like, does that then maybe make Rob look a little hotter? But I don't think so because I don't know. We'll see. Because I was like, I can see why he did it, and if it was even closer, I would have been even more like that was a huge move to use your pull to do that. I still think it helped in the landslide that it was for sure, but.
Well, and maybe it like undid the hotness. Like it was definitely a risk to put a target on his back, which is why he said it was a risk he didn't want to take. But the other thing is, I think that then Tony saying you're a sellout then like brought everyone sort of back to feel bad for him. So I think that actually ended up like undoing some of the heat that he got from the first of using it to begin with.
That's very true. Yeah, that was mean of Tony. He didn't have to do that.
That was rough. He was so sad and crying. I felt bad for him too.
Oh.
And I didn't think he was a sellout. Like it is true. Like if Tony didn't talk to him after getting the shield, that is kind of a thing, you know? At the same time, Tony told us to the screen, like directly to the camera, he has me. Like I have him. I'm indebted to him. I'm going to stay with him the whole time. But he should tell him that, you know, tell Rob that too. So I think it's just this idea where like, if you're a good veteran player, you know not to talk to each other. You should be avoiding each other and not looking like you're working together. So I also see where Tony would be coming from too.
Right. Oh, complicated. But if Rob comes from, hasn't he been called the like Rob father or something, like the Godfather?
Yeah, the Godfather of Survivor. Mm-hmm.
If that's his, then he wants you to come to him and show gratitude. Yeah. Maybe that's kind
true.
Of thing.
Yeah, that's
true. It was kind of like a mob movie moment. I was like, oh shit.
No, it was. He's like, you owe me and you didn't even say hi. Like,
you're cut.
Yeah, exactly. You're cut off because you didn't give me enough. I honestly think Rob wouldn't have cared if he didn't need a reason. You know what I mean? I think that was his point too. Like, he didn't really want to do that because he doesn't really care. He doesn't really care that he hasn't said anything to him. But like, he felt like he had to just come up with something, and that was what stuck. And then later we see Derrick, which is part of what I thought was really smart, was that Derrick said to everybody, I did know that Rob had given his shield to Tony. I didn't know that Tony hadn't talked to him since he gave him the shield, which was a way of casting doubt on Rob, which is smart because he both wants to work with Rob to an extent as like a co-shield, but he also wants to be able to later be able to pull on this sort of thread to be like, well, I don't know if I can trust him. And so he told us that to her face. He's so smart to not trust Rob. And he's also so smart to use him as long as he can. So he like really, when he said that to everybody, I was like, wow, that was a complicated, really good call. Like very good play, what he did there to the group like that. Smart.
Damn. He's fun to watch. Oh, is this fun? This is like, this is, there's a lot of, you know what I'm noticing too? Sierra hardly talks. Even when she doesn't say her reasons, maybe she gets nervous. I might get nervous like that. But I'm like, no one has said her name. She is flying so under the radar. Maybe that'll work for her. I don't know.
She said like one thing. I think the other thing too is she came out on maybe it was social media. It might have been social media or on an interview on a podcast. She said that like, damn, the gamers are cutthroat. Like meaning like people who play the game or shows. So not just everyone on Traitors, but the gamers, that they're cutthroat. So I think she felt probably a little bit out of her depth.
Yeah. I kind of wanted her to align herself with the housewives because she's a Bravo celebrity too. And she was kind of very much like the housewives. It was almost like an I'm not one of them kind of thing, which was interesting. I don't know.
Is she sort of like with Gabby Chrishell of it all, or is she really just solo dolo?
I don't think, because they made their little alliance and it doesn't seem like she's as in on it. But if it seems to me like a hot girl alliance, and Sierra should definitely be in a hot girl alliance. But if it's like
Chrishell like say really nice things about her outfit, like she was like upping her a lot. So maybe she's just like friends with them, but she's not in on the alliance or something.
Gotcha. Which might be good for her. Who knows? I mean, she's flying under the radar, which could be great.
Be interesting to see where she lands.
Oof. I've lost my. Am I going
post challenge
this page?
Scheming. You nailed it. Where your thing is, it's perfect. Yep.
Oh,
the post challenge scheming.
Excellent. So, is it my turn now or yours? I'm so sorry. Confused.
Oh, you just do the post challenge scheming. It's the last.
Oh, I get it. Yep. I understand. So, after the challenge, everyone is running around suggesting who the traitors are, and the names that are coming up are Robin, Tom Sandoval, and Wells are the kind of the three names.
Perfect. So then at the round table, straight off the bat, Bob, the drag queen, takes control of the conversation and goes for Wells. Pretty hardcore. Robin jumps on board and says, yeah, you did really dislike my comment when I just made a comment. And Wells defends himself and sort of throws Robin back out there, but also throws Sam out, which was, I think, a sloppy move because then it sort of looked like he's just shooting in the dark. I also think he didn't do a good enough job saying, like, the fact that you defended their thinking made it look like you were a traitor. That's what upset me. Like, you know, it's like he didn't really defend himself well. So then Sandoval goes for Chrishell and Jeremy. Again, sloppy. Chrishell says that, well, that's interesting because I told you before the roundtable that I was friends with your ex. And so I felt like maybe that was a part of it because then you were scaring me with your eyes, your Spock eyebrow and the spotlight you were putting on me after we took our masks off, eye masks off. And so she's saying it could be Tom because he threw out the most names and created the most chaos. Bob, the drag queen, was like, well, I applaud Tom and myself because it's scary to throw out a name. Sierra threw out Ivar. Because of the Dorinda retaliation, because he was mad at Dorinda for yelling at him in the kitchen after the challenge. Dolo, who's Dolores from New Jersey, says, if I was a cop, I would go to the last person they had a problem with. And I wrote back to that, like, but isn't that obvious? Like, if you were a cop and you knew the game, you'd probably know not to go for that person because then you would think it was them. So Danielle says, we think a housewife is a traitor because they'd take out someone who was close to them to deflect. Like, she's just being so obvious and annoying. And then Robin was like, I don't know about you. I think it's a smart move, and I haven't done anything to suggest I'm a traitor. Dylan says, I haven't talked to you, Robin. Sierra says, Robin jumped off the boat. Is it because she's safe anyway? Robin said she'd do it 10 out of 10 times again. And then Wells says, what do you think, Brittany? I just want all of you to be talking. And then Carolyn tries to talk and people cut her off. And so someone says, let her talk. Bob says that the traitors are probably loving this. Nikki votes for Ion, which I was like, what? Like left field. And then a lot of people say they don't think it's Ion. So that makes her a good vote because it's a good throwaway vote. But my point about that to myself here in the notes was like, but then there are a lot of people who don't agree with you, Nikki. So doesn't that kind of make you a target now that like you would go for Ion even as a throwaway? Ion voted for Tony, Sandoval for Jeremy for no reason at all. Again, looked like a throwaway. Bad idea because Jeremy's going to take that on deck. Chrishell voted for Sandoval. That's where I was like, why wouldn't you vote for Chrishell after you went after Chrishell?
Right.
And then one thing that happened was she was explaining why he has the good skills to be a traitor. Or maybe it was that, or maybe it was someone else who was saying, but one of the times someone was explaining why someone would be really good, a really good call. Oh, that was a different vote. Never mind, that was a different roundtable. We'll come back to that. So then there's a bunch of votes for Ivar, Robin, and Wells, and ultimately Wells gets the most votes. So he is the first voted out.
He is. I have a segment on Wells. I thought his psyche was showing. He came off as a total dick. I think in this whole show, he's come off as an asshole. I really feel that way.
He is one.
He cut people off. He's swarmy. He in no means was going to get off that boat and go on a raft. I just found his whole demeanor on this show to be ick. And I wonder if marrying that woman from Modern Family's got a big pep in his step. And then I feel like his whole shtick on Bachelor in Paradise is like, oh, I'm the nice bartender, the good guy that you can talk to. I saw rampant sexism in the way he came off on this show. And then his aggressive clapping, I was like, it was like weird. I was like, your psyche is showing, sir. Your white male privilege is showing, and you need to chill the fuck out. It was like, he like gave me the ick as a person a little bit. And the ick is he's a complicated human with many great traits. In that moment, I was like, whoa, y'all, you are not handling this well.
Yeah. Sit down. I mean, the fact he was the first voted out is probably going to like humiliate him forever, which I love because honestly, it feels a little justice-like. Mm-hmm. I have a lot to tell you about him briefly, which probably we should end on this because we're about an hour in. So we'll save some of this for next week.
Yay!
And this is a good place to end for that. But I will say, so when he was first on The Bachelorette, he was on, I think it was the blonde woman. No, JoJo's. He was on JoJo's season. He was a radio host and he was hilarious. He was so funny. He was so self-deprecating, so humble. Like, that's why people loved him. Humble and self-deprecating and funny. Perfect, right? Like, love. So that's why he kept coming around Bachelor in Paradise. Then he became a bartender. So now fast forward, right, he like married the woman who's a famous actor from Modern Family. She's the older daughter, teenage daughter. And then and then also the host of Love Island, which did not go well when she was hosting it. And then he also became as the resident bartender. He tried, by the way, to become a host after Chris Harrison was taken out. He got one chance at it and did not do well enough, was never asked to be the host. Like, so that bit him. He felt like, I think, hurt by that. So right around that time, his attitude completely changed. I used to listen to his podcast. Yeah, I used to listen to his podcast. And he was the same thing. He was funny. He was a little bit of a snarky dick, but like it was kind of funny because it was in the context of also being like self-deprecating and like humble. That all changed. He was going on interviews with other podcasts and saying things like, well, we, like meaning the producers, as if he's a producer now, which he's not. Ew. He did this like terrible scene in one of the Paradise seasons where he was like wearing a wig and pretending to be a woman. Terrible. He thought that was so funny. It was terrible. And also just like really inappropriate for so many reasons, sociopolitically. He started saying, like at one point he was talking to Susan from Golden Bachelorette and Nancy. And Nancy was like, oh, you look like you need some help behind the bar or whatever. Like, why don't I come and be a bartender with you? And he goes, oh, I'm so used to this. Everyone always wants my job. Like, let me tell you why you're not going to have it. She tries to jump in and he goes, no, like, I'm telling you now. I'm telling you why. It was wild. Like, it sounded so terrible. He then rattles on about why he's so good at it. No one understands that he's actually he goes, no one understands that what I'm actually doing is bartending, which is crazy because we also know there is another bartender. It's not that he isn't bartending because he is, but there is another bartender. It's not like it's only him, like the whole time. And so, but the funny thing is by telling her that, he's proving why Nancy should join him to help. Right. Like, it's like, okay, right. So you're working so hard. Like, so Nancy should help, So she said it too. She was like, so that seems like you could use another bartender. I was like, go Nancy. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, he just is so up himself now. Like, he thinks he's like the big dog, like thinks of himself as a producer. It's just so trash. I'm like so over it, and it sucks because that was totally not his brand coming into this world. So like if you like apply that to what happened on the show, I was like, wow, he didn't even have like the good parts of him to like balance it. It was just the rough stuff, and like it was a little vindicating, but like also like just kind of sad. And yeah, I think he needs to chill the fuck out.
Yeah, that's really helpful because I remember liking him back in the day and thinking he was like kind of cute, like kind of my type, frankly.
Yep.
And so I think I probably held on to that and forgot the reasons why I felt that way. So it's good to know that like it wasn't like baseless because I was like, who the fuck is this guy? And it sounds like he's had some ego stuff get activated throughout the years of being in this Bachelor world.
It's wild. And like he was also on a show like The World's Worst Chefs or whatever, and he was a little cocky. That was like in the middle of his transition, so like he was a little cocky, but it wasn't terrible. But I will also say he does his podcast with Brandy Cyrus, who's Molly Cyrus's sister, and so he's also like very close with like the Cyrus family, and he like calls their mom Tish, like Tish the Dish or whatever. Like he thinks he's like really close with, or he probably is close with their mom. So like I don't know. I feel like that also contributed in addition to being married to. Am I going to remember her name? I was hoping at some point I would end up remembering her name. I usually know it right offhand, but forget. But yeah, him after marrying his wife as well. Their wedding looks incredible. Looks so pretty. Yeah.
Good on him. I hope that he's nice to her.
I know. And I think he is. And she also has like Sarah Hyland. That's what it is. She also has an autoimmune disorder, and he's like really like all in and really supportive. And I think that's really nice. So I like their dynamic. I don't like how he has become externally.
It was, I think I did not see the full transition. So for me, it was like a bit like, whoa, what the fuck is going on here? Yeah.
Jolting. It's helpful because it reminds me of like how different it is, because I've noticed the transition, but I haven't really thought about like what happens if you just get a snapshot and a snapshot. It's just like such a jolt. So I love it. We're getting so much, and it's fun because everybody is connected to other worlds. You know what I mean? And so we get to like sort of think about other shows as we go through the castmates and sort of think about each of the players and each of the scenes and each of the challenges, and it's rich.
All the things. It's so much fun. Yes, this is a blast, and I'm so excited to keep talking about this show with you. It's so much fun.
Me too. I can't wait. Oh, what a joy. And folks, what a joy to be thinking about this with you all. And we're also going to hear your thoughts about it, because you're going to come to our Patreon tomorrow when we create it. And when it's launched, I mean, we've created it. It's going to be at patreon.com/realitytest, capital REALITY, capital TEST. I don't know how much those capital letters mean, but they are actually capitalized in the URL when I see it on a browser. So we're doing it. Maybe I'll practice the other way too at some point. But it's /realitytest. You'll notice that we're announcing that as well if you forget the URL on our social medias. So if you come to our social medias, we are on TikTok at dr.realitv, REALITV. We're also on Instagram, where we have very similar handles at Dr. Ray Pods and at Dr. K Pods. And we're collaborating on posts, so you'll be able to get to the other if you find one of us. And you'll also find us on Facebook at Reality Test Pod. I have it linked with the Instagram, so anytime I post on Instagram, it goes directly on Facebook. So you'll see similar things if you're on Facebook but not Instagram. And then you will also see our YouTube is at the @ Reality Test Pod, all one word. You will also see that we're going to have posts that advertise things that will be on the Patreon. So you can see little like previews. If you're not convinced, if you want to join us on Patreon, at least keep an eye on our social medias and kind of get a sense if you can see some content you'd like to learn more about. So, hey.
And download us. They can download us and join our Patreon, as Dr. K so wonderfully said. Please do these things to help us keep doing this thing that we love, if you are so inclined.
Stay afloat. Help us stay afloat.
Yes.
And what a joy. Deep appreciation to you all and to my dear co-host, Dr. Ray. And we will see you next session, friends.
Bye.